All right, everybody. So we'll get started here, and then hopefully, if my colleagues could keep an eye on the participation list here and let anybody who pops in. I just wanted to really quickly welcome everybody. My name is Matt Fox. I'm the director of guidance here at TCS, and it's an honor and a privilege to work in the guidance department here and get to serve your students in the way that we get to. And seriously, wanting to extend my thanks for being here tonight. For tuning into, even if you're not here tonight, for tuning in to the recording afterwards. It's so important for us and the work that we do and the amazing conversations that we get to have with your children. We know that they're going home, hopefully, and having conversations with you too about this stuff. And you're a really important piece of the puzzle as we support your children in their future pathways. So again, thank you for being here and for taking the time to learn about how you can support us in supporting your children. And as always, we know that course selections and talking about the future can, bring up some anxiety, some nervousness for both students and parents. So just reminding you of our open door and reach out at any time that we can help. So on that, I'm going to turn things over and we'll get this party started.
Okay. All right. Thanks, Matt. Hello, everybody, and welcome. Good evening. My name's Ty Bailey. And as Matt said, I'm going to sort of walk you through different components or of the process of the course selections. First of all, you can see in our guidance department, the counselor assignments. So if your child's in Bickle, Brent, or Rigby, Mr. Keith Brooks, who is on the call with us tonight, will be is the counselor. Anyone in Bethune, Burns, and Orchard, I am the counselor for. Matt Fox, who you just were introduced to, is the counselor for Olive, Hodgetts, and Ketchum. And Scott in Wright House, if your child's in one of those houses, the counselor is Mrs. Lisa Elson. And finally, we have our guidance assistant, Mrs. Tanya Skiok, and that is our guidance department this year. So next slide. So what matters to your child? So, so many kids, instantly like, well, what kind of career do I want to get into? What's going to make me the most money? We need to take a step back from that and really center this in the context of, what are you interested in? What do you love to do? What courses are you passionate about where you can't wait to get to class that day? And identify your ballpark of interest and not, so much focus on exactly what are you going to be doing when you're 27 years old and so forth. What sort of person do I want to be? What do I want to do? So it's, again, really defining purpose and direction, excuse me, is very important when looking at next steps in terms of selecting courses. All right, next slide. So an overall timeline at this point, the grade 11s in Levan Hall with their counselors have gone through 2 sessions, course selection part 1, which was, coupled with an overview of the grade 11 guidance program. And then more recently, we had the course selection part 2, where we sort of dug in, looked at out of province, out of country requirements, as well as the AP program. So at this point, your child will have a paper hard copy of the course selections, the course of study in terms of what's offered, in terms of different subject areas. Now is the time to be having the dinner table talk, FaceTime talk for boarders and so forth. And through those discussions, really hopefully you're generating some questions. And if those questions aren't answered tonight, please reach out. This is what we're here, to do, to support you. We'd love to have a follow-up chat if you've got specific questions or concerns about your child's situation. So the Google form, this is the method in which the students will be submitting their course selections this year, will be sent out on Friday, February 23rd, with a due date by Friday, March 1st. I'd also like to bring attention to, on Friday, February 23rd, we have a course fair for the first time ever at our school, which I'm very excited about. And this will be a great opportunity for your child to go to the teacher in the various departments and really pick their brain in terms of, what's the course all about? What's the format? What the level of rigor, types of assignments, and so forth. And coming from the teacher who that's their course, they live this, they can really answer any question that may be brought their direction. So this is something to all of our grade 11s as counselors, we've really emphasized you really should be there, because 11 into 12, you have so much choice in terms of different courses and electives that you want to select. is to really get to make informed decisions, I should say, by finding out everything that you need to and what, any questions that you have to have those answered, so that you feel confident about your choices moving forward. Okay, next slide. So guidance support, regular group sessions in grade 11. So like I said, we've just had the first few, and now we sort of we'll break into smaller groups by house, and every 2 weeks we'll be having Friday sessions during flex, which is the afternoon in between the last 2 periods of the day. And in grade 12, we've got the monthly sessions, again by counselor, smaller groups. And then aside from the mandatory programming, we have a variety of different optional sessions available, whether it's NCAA and post-secondary athletics, to transition to university. What will September after TCS look like, at the post-secondary school of choice, from the social aspect, from the academic transition piece, etc. So there's many. These are excellent, and I say to the students, even though it says optional, you really should go, because it's just a benefit to you in your future moving forward. So, and then most importantly, I would say, in addition to the optional sessions and larger group programming, is the one-to-one meetings. And we really say to the students, like, you got to come in so we can talk about your individual situation, as opposed to doing a Q&A session with 25 students. That's more information sharing. Whereas when you come into the office, we can really take a look specifically at your interests, your concerns, your next steps, and help you along the way as they shape their application list in coming months. So yeah, we look at, in those one-to-one guidance meetings, self-awareness, course selection, pathways, what options exist. English proficiency testing, standardized testing for US admissions, SAT, ACT, scholarship support, and obviously international application support as well. Okay, next up. Next slide. All right, in order to graduate in the province of Ontario, all students must have successfully completed 30 credits, of which 18 are compulsory and the remaining 12 are optional or electives. So if we look at the actual breakdown in the Ontario curriculum through the Ministry of Education, all students must have successfully completed 4 credits in English. So as I do these presentations, I say to students, even if you're not a big fan of studying English, you have to take it, because English for you, and the 4 indicates the 4th year of high school, is required as a graduation requirement, and it's also a prerequisite regardless of program and subject area at 99% of all post-secondary institutions coast to coast, and as well outside of Canada. Students will need 3 credits in math. Now, obviously in grade 11, there's some students will this year completing their 3rd credit and will turn their back on math and not continue with the 4th. If they're looking at specializing in an area or studying in a subject area that doesn't require math at the post-secondary level, either as a prerequisite or there won't be math in a program at university. With that said, there's still a number of students going in that direction, such as fine arts, humanities, etc., languages, that still will choose to do a 4th credit in math. Many students, with that said, do more than the 3. As you look at business programs, science programs, engineering, all require additional math courses, which will be highlighted later in the presentation. 2 credits in science, an additional credit in science, as you can see to the right at the bottom. I don't know if you can see my cursor, but that additional credit, which our students through the TCS academic requirements, which are in addition to the OSSD requirements, will pick up in terms of their computer science, technology, and innovations course in grade 9-10. The credit in history, 1 credit in Canadian geography, 1 in the arts. And again, a caveat to this, or an add-on, is that the TCS academic requirements have an additional arts credit requirement. 1, because the school values the arts, but also in doing so, we meet one of the additional group 2 requirements over here to the right, 2nd bullet down. Okay, 1 credit in HPE, 1 credit in French as a 2nd language, and it should be noted that French at our school can be substituted out and Latin or Spanish be put in its place because we offer a variety of different languages. So for OSSD requirements, it's the 1 2nd language. TCS academic requirements require an additional. language credit. And again, we value, the delivery and programming of foreign languages, but also likewise to the right in the top bullet, it meets the group 1 additional requirement. And then finally, half a credit in civics and a half a credit in careers, and that's teamed up as a semester courses. Next slide. Now, in addition to obtaining those 30 credits, students must also accumulate or earn 40 hours of community service, which can be collected or earned over 4 years from beginning of grade 9 until the end of grade 12. And with that said, most of our grads have well in excess of 40 hours because our fantastic service learning office provides them with so many opportunities throughout the school year to accumulate more hours in that regard. And finally, students have to successfully pass the provincial literacy requirement. That's written in grade 10. If a student fails, is not successful in the first attempt, they write it in grade 11. Likewise, if they're not successful in grade 11, then they'd have somewhat of a course offering, if you will, through the English department to help them get to the finish line to meet that requirement. So going back to, as I noted a minute ago, the TCS academic program, which is in addition to the Ontario Secondary School Diploma 1, that third science or technology credit, sort of by default or by design, I should say, students take in that ICD 2.0 computer science course, an additional language credit, the additional arts, and then finally 1 senior social science credit is required as part of the TCS academic requirements. Okay, so in their senior year, students at Trinity, the maximum number of courses you can take is 6, and the minimum number of courses is 5. And we'll talk more about where that comes into play, whether a student is credit rich, ahead by credits through having secured some summer credits, or also whether they're applying to, for example, United States, in which case, even if a student was credit rich, they'd still have to take the full complement of 6 courses to demonstrate maximum rigor, which is part of the admissions decision-making equation for the US at many schools. Grade 12 English, what are we here? Ooh. Okay, as I said, have to have it in order to graduate, and it's also a prerequisite for pretty much every program coast to coast. If a student is looking at studying English for you in the summer, it's very important that they consult with their counselor, because not all course providers are, I think, in my estimation, of equal quality. Some we can point the students into the direction that are highly effective, and others we can really, caution stay away from. It really is ideal if you're taking it in the summer to have a course where there is a structured start date and finish date. Because if a student does English for you with an outside provider and comes back in September and say, well, I'm half done, it was nice out, I was playing with my friends and we're on a family trip or summer camp, I never got to it, we have to put them into the actual classroom English for you in September, because again, that's the credit you need to graduate. You need it for all your applications. You have to have that done. So if a student is very self-directed and can manage that in the summer, again, it's doable. A great option would be the TCS Summer Academy, going back to my reference to a specific start and finish date. Also, down here, note of caution says students and families should be aware that there are a few schools and programs that wish to see core grade 12 courses taken during the year at a student's home school. And in Ontario, specifically, it's referring to University of Waterloo and U of T engineering only. Now, that's not to say you can't. I have had many students in the past take summer English, a compulsory or prerequisite course in the summer. You just have to clarify with Waterloo or U of T saying the reason for that. I'm not taking summer English to lighten my load in my senior year. That's what they frown upon, and hence why they're not too keen about it. But if a student's taking English for you in the summer to enable them to take a more rigorous program in grade 12 or an additional AP, etc., Waterloo would be like, that's A-okay, no problem at all. And the same with the U of T. So I know this raises alarm bells for some people, but again, it's something if your child's looking at that, is to meet with us. And likewise, you'll no doubt have questions surrounding that as well. We can definitely have a Google Meet or a Zoom call as well, so we can answer any questions. Or you can, come into the office if you're nearby as well. Happy to chat more about that. So electives, I said, or we can see, there are a variety in different subject areas: the arts, HP, computer science, language, business, social science, math sciences, and English. For the sake of time, we're not going to dive into that, but you'll have access to the course selection information that's posted there to the right, and your child already has a hard copy, as noted earlier. Okay, next step.
Sure, and I'll just note on that, I did add a link in the chat that takes you to the full list of courses that are offered at TCS that you can browse there.
Okay, so advanced placement courses, great for enrichment. Number one reason to ever take an AP course is just the love of the subject material. So for example, I love biology. I want to learn it to the highest level the school has to offer. AP would be a good fit for me, provided my teacher supports that move as an appropriate placement based on my performance in their class this year. Also, for students applying to the US, it is a big deal at many schools, as it's a differentiating factor in tight applicant pools, showing that a student has taken on maximum rigor or chosen to take the most challenging courses their school provides, which for us would be the advanced placement courses. Recommended maximum number of APs is 4. Obviously having the prereqs, and in some, in a rare instance, we may have a student, depending on the student and their situation, their ability to handle workload, their goals, etc. And the teacher's recommendations may take 5, but 4 is really that sweet spot in terms of maximum, and I wouldn't encourage students to look past that. Again, any way you slice it, with 4 APs in a course load of 6, that's going to be a rigorous, challenging workload. So TCS, as I said, we have a wide variety of different AP courses and exams, and there's just various levels of distinction in terms of certification and scholar status. So APs, this question always comes up: well, how will that benefit me in terms of admissions in Canada? The answer to that is it won't. All right, the universities, when you apply, will not see that a student is taking AP. They will see the main course code, but we can't put AP notation on the Ontario student transcripts. Only after the fact, where you've received an offer and you was accepted at some schools, you can declare that you've taken APs. What you do with that, again, some schools will say, well, you get advanced standing credit, or you can bypass first year in that course. I would never say to a student, go that direction. Take the first year course. Shelve that extra, advanced standing credit in your back pocket. Cash it in later on in your undergraduate degree. But the number one thing is you'd be sitting in that, let's say, first year chemistry class, having taken AP, and it's like, this is review, that's review, this point's review. Oh, there's some new material. So it'll be a real mix, but definitely excellent preparation for the next level. Any way you slice it, regardless of where you're applying. And the Summer Academy, it's $13.95 this summer, and it begins on July 2nd and runs through to July 26th. And it's a comfortable format in terms of, am I going to be glued in front of the laptop all day long? And I remember 3-4 years ago, it may have been 4 years ago, my oldest daughter took English 4U through TCS and was all concerned that would cut into her cottaging time. But really, it was like an hour in the morning, conferencing with the teacher. They got set in terms of that day's tasks. She was able to read, work on essays, and still get out wakeboarding and having fun at the cottage. So it's really moved at a comfortable pace, and she really got a lot out of it. So yeah, again, a lot of it, you've got to be independent learner in terms of those asynchronous hours during the day to make sure you're staying up, in terms of your rough drafts, your readings, and then often, some teachers will reconvene later in the afternoon as a full group and talk about next steps and so forth. So it does give flexibility, and that can vary from one course to the next, depending on the teacher and their expectations. So course options for students in grade 11 currently would be the Advanced Functions course and the English. And it's also offered through Cambridge as an additional offering. So online and also through Cambridge Miss Du. So again, last point I've talked about in terms of if you're going to do something aside from the Trinity that has an open timeline, some providers give you 18 months to complete, others give 12 months to complete, and that can be dangerous in terms of students going, well, I've got so much time to do this, I'll shelve it for now. They don't come back to it. And again, if it happens to be English for you, you're in the classroom. On the other hand, if a student is well ahead in credits and they're taking an elective course just out of self-interest to get yet another course, if you're not done, for me, I'd be like, it doesn't really concern me. What concerns me is that you've got your prerequisites in place, completed the first day of grade 12. Otherwise, again, going back to that English, it can be highly problematic for someone who has not finished that when they come back in September. Okay, over to Mr. Brooks for post-secondary considerations.
All right. Hello, everyone. Happy Valentine's Day. Let's look at, we're just going to go quickly through three big options for post-secondary considerations. Number one is a gap year. Your child, it may be best for them to do a gap year right after high school. For some students, I think this is a great opportunity to, if they feel like they just don't have the time to explore some interest just with the busyness of the year that they have and all that is entailed in the grade 12 year, gap year is a great opportunity. In fact, I've noticed a trend over the past like 10 years in guidance that Ivy League schools in particular in the US, if a student gets an offer to an Ivy League school, the Ivy League will actually send a communication to the student and they'll actually suggest it. They'll say, have you thought about a gap year? Because this may actually be, it may be good for you. Some students may just need a little extra kind of cooking time as well. Potentially even doing like another year at Trinity. It doesn't have to be here, but it could just be pursuing something outside of the classroom. This is something that we definitely help out students with. If this is something that you think would be interesting to look into, we would recommend starting with cangap.ca. And this slide deck will be made available afterwards. Let's go on to the next slide. The other option is college. I think more and more students should be considering college. It offers a pathway to almost immediate employment afterwards for students that want to work with their hands and pursue a trade. It's an excellent choice. And the other thing that I'm just noting for students that pursue an arts degree or a general science degree, I'm actually finding that a lot of them are going to college for a diploma in things like public relations or human resources after they're done their degree. So college bears consideration maybe out of high school, but maybe even in the middle of a university program. The other option, of course, is university, and we're going to move. There's a couple websites in there. Maybe somebody could throw them in a chat if it hasn't been already, just for parents to have. This slide deck will be made available afterwards for you as well. What I want to do now is look at Ontario University admissions, and in terms of getting into a little bit of the nuts and bolts as to what is required. This is content that has been gone over with your child. So we're going over it with you. Further questions from this, I mean, we'll be available at the end for questions. We can connect with you as families at any time. There are booking links in our emails, and you can book with us if you have further questions. The big course everyone needs, grade 12 English. Universities in Ontario are basing their decisions, actually in Canada, on the top 6 grade 12 courses that include the prerequisites. And we're going to go over some of those prerequisites. We are seeing increased competitiveness to get into some of these programs. And we're seeing some schools and specific programs move towards essays and actually job interviews almost, where there is there's a video interview that's done. Some of your current workplaces may use something called the Kira Talent Agency. I know we do here at Trinity when we're doing an initial screen of potential applicants to our school. And well, University of Toronto, University of British Columbia, and Queen's University now uses that same software. So we help students out with that, and we give them access to our own license to Kira Talent to practice. But this is something that we're increasingly seeing. Still, the majority of programs don't require it, but I would say the majority of hyper-selected programs are starting to require it. Let's go on to the next slide. Business, just really simple. Business in terms of courses that would be needed would be math and English. And then the other courses can be whatever suits the student's fancy and curiosity and interest. One of the things that I'm trying to encourage my students with is not to get locked into a funnel where if they're thinking about business or engineering or science, just to not try and take every course that relates to that discipline. They should be pursuing things that they're interested in. And I would actually encourage students to pursue things that they might be interested in. I found that for some students that actually will open up a whole new pathway. For other students, it may lean into a minor. I know my wife really, she studied politics at Queen's. And then she took a classics course and just fell in love, and she ended up minoring in classics. So it could turn into a minor, or it could turn into a hobby and a lifelong interest. To be safe, for business, it would be grade 12 functions, grade 12 calculus. But there are a number of programs that would also accept another math credit instead of calculus. And again, that's just there's going to be a research component to the grade 11 guidance course, which is going to be rolling out it already has started to roll out and will continue to roll out to May. And that'll be something for your child to research. Science, pretty straightforward here. It's going to be grade 12 functions, grade 12 English, and then 2 core sciences. Typically, students interested more in like a mathematical or physical science, chem and physics is a good pairing. For students thinking about a more biological, health science, nursing, medical kind of pathway, biology and chemistry are a good pairing. They could take all 3 sciences. It's just a lot. I just try and tell students all 3 sciences will actually probably pop up in some capacity in their undergrad. So it bears consideration. In grade 12 calculus, research should be done to see if you need that. Engineering, oh boy, there's no choice here. It's English, calculus, functions, chemistry, physics. We only allow 6 courses at the grade 12 level, so that gives students an opportunity for 1 other elective. Performing arts, visual performing arts. It's really English, and then the other 5 courses can be whatever the student would like. There is so much freedom in applying to this discipline. However, discipline needs to be cultivated in the area of practicing for an audition and preparing a portfolio if the student is applying for something like, if a student is applying for something in the visual arts. That would something hopefully the student might have a couple pieces for that could be developed likely in their visual arts class this year. And then the grade 12 class would be spent cultivating that in further developing that portfolio, and say in drama or music, preparing for that audition. Then for the arts, humanities, social science, there's there's maximum flexibility here as well. A lot of opportunity to explore interest. It's kind of interesting how things have changed over time. I've been teaching for, I think 14 years. I don't know. But I've increasingly seen students interested in economics, more programs mandating grade 12 functions, and in some cases, rarely, but some mandating grade 12 calculus. But really, apart from that, there's maximum flexibility. It is important for students to kind of do the research. There is not an infinite amount of possibilities out there. We definitely try to keep up with what is out there, but it's really important that students do specific research on the schools and programs they are interested in to make sure that they're taking the right courses in order to have the opportunity to secure a spot in the program of their choice. And lastly, I'm just going to look at programs outside of Ontario. It's really similar. I don't really think it bears much repeating. If you're applying to British Columbia, they like chemistry and physics for science. We explain this to students, but largely it's the same. I think one thing that's kind of neat is that out east, schools in Nova Scotia and New Brunswick, the exception of University of New Brunswick, will look at your top 5 courses instead of your top 6. And sometimes there's a bit of a different math requirement. Although University of New Brunswick and Fredericton and St. John's is kind of the outlier with that. And I'm going to turn this over now to Mr. Matt Fox.
Okay, so we were hoping to leave at least 15 minutes for Q&A. So I'm going to try to get through these last slides quickly, but hopefully make sure that I'm addressing any questions or concerns that you have. So U.S. admissions, every year we have a handful of students who are interested in pursuing post-secondary outside of Canada. And so for U.S. admissions, what is quite important is that your child lets their counselor know sooner than later that US is one of the pathways that they're considering. That will help us make sure that we're encouraging them in the right way when they're building their timetable for next year. And as well as what we're finding increasingly important is to set up the right mind frame for attacking US applications. And one of that really comes down to focusing on fit instead of brand name. We all know like the top 50 universities in the US that get the most attention. However, of the over 4,000 schools in the US, there are many, many, many fantastic programs and schools outside of that top 50 list. And it's really important that your child comes to the table with an open and flexible mind in terms of thinking about what schools they might want to apply to at the US. In fact, I was just in a webinar the other day, and it was suggesting that any school that has a selectivity rate of under 30% can almost be seen as random. So our top students at the school, at any school, it's a really almost a random chance of whether or not they're going to get in, because like selectivity is that challenging. As you've heard, in terms, and we want to support students for having an impressive application. Part of that is setting them up with a rigorous program, but rigorous that they can succeed in. So, you know, dumping 4, 5, 6 APs on a student and then watching them not be able to rise to the occasion is actually quite heartbreaking for us to see. And that's not us setting a student up for success. Similarly, what we're also finding so important with these competitive schools is that, you know, that rigor and those marks is only the first level that kind of keeps you in the running. And what we really need to demonstrate after that is that curiosity. So a student who is able to pursue their natural curiosity outside of the classroom. That student who is able to find meaningful engagement and commitment, or create opportunities for themselves outside of the traditional confines of a school setting, okay? So again, if we're loading students with a high academic program, not only are we possibly sacrificing some of their you know, success based on their grades, but we're also limiting their capacity to explore things outside and be able to show what's unique about them, what sets them apart from the many other high-flying students that are applying. The last thing that I just want to mention about US applications that's important to bear in mind is that students are judged against the school profile. So as you know, Keith was talking earlier, there's lots of schools in Ontario that don't offer an AP program. So those students are not penalized for that when they go to apply for admission to a US college, because a school profile would accompany that student that would clearly highlight that no APs were available for that student to take. So similarly, as Ty mentioned, we have a cap on students where we have a clear recommendation that students don't exceed 4 APs in their grade 12 year. So that is kind of how students are being judged. They're being judged against our profile. So sometimes we see lots of students, you know, taking AP courses and exams outside of our program, thinking that that's giving them an advantage when really it's not. That time could be better spent, again, diving deep into what that student is really excited about and how are they able to create opportunities to show that excitement. Now, kind of on the flip side then are UK applications, and many students come into our office and say that they are interested in applying to both the US and the UK. And while that's not impossible, it is a bit challenging because those two markets are looking for two very different things from their students. So in the US, where they want to see breadth, so if you're going into engineering, they still are maybe excited to see, did you take a music class or did you take writer's craft? So they want to see kind of breadth. Or if you are going into an English major, were you able to still take advanced functions or calculus? So are you able to show that breadth? Are you able to take a language all the way through your high school? The UK, however, if you are interested in engineering, they want to see that you've taken a very clear path to engineering and that you've looked for opportunities outside of the classroom to really explore the engineering pathway. So you can see kind of how there's a balance here, and it's hard to balance both US and UK applications. Not that we can't do it, but it's a bit challenging to do. Both the US and the UK will have some sort of personal statement that's required. And again, that's why I'm just urging you, if your child is interested in pursuing US or UK, to just let their guidance counselor know. We'll offer lots of support, lots of sessions on this topic for them. But the more we get ahead of it, the more that we can partner with your children to get them ready for a quite intense application process in comparison to a Canadian application. So you've got the next steps there. I've posted that course link into the chat. And now we're just hoping that you engage in some curious conversations with your children. We hope that you let them take the lead a bit. So that's always our approach. You know, we like the students in the driver's seat, and we're here to walk alongside them and kind of support each part of the process in terms of what's making them excited, what's making them nervous, what's adding anxiety, and sometimes even how to support and balance conversations that they're having at home as well. Ty mentioned the course fair next Friday. Perfect opportunity for your children to get more course-specific information from the experts and the teachers who are teaching that course. And I think that's it. Oh, and just a shameless plug that we have been putting a piece into the Thursday newsletter at the start of each month, and it really is geared mostly towards grade 11 and grade 12 parents, as we're kind of helping you through this application process and giving you some tips and some conversation prompts so that you can continue to support your charges at home. So I'm going to open the floor for questions. Feel free to unmute yourself or raise your hand and we can call on you or whatever. And if this isn't the avenue that you would prefer to ask questions in, again, you can drop them in the chat and we'll try to answer them, or you can reach out to your child's counselor that's noted on this slide here. And maybe while we wait for someone to be brave enough to unmic and ask away, I just want to reiterate all of our sincere thanks for engaging tonight and again, just taking this step so that you're a little bit in the know and you can support your children. And just to reiterate that we are so excited and we look forward to supporting your children through this time that definitely can be a mix of emotions. Let's put it that way. Usually there's a lot of questions, so I'm worried that we put you to sleep. I hope that, or maybe we just did a really good job of answering them all.
Gonna say it, yeah. Either or.
Okay, here's a question. As far as AP courses go, which ones require an extra half block during spare? So that's a good question. So the science department has, I guess, decided that the AP chemistry program and the AP biology program, the content in those courses is so intense that they cannot cover it during the regular time slots. So those would be the only two that require a half block added to the student's schedule. And you're right, that then does take one of your children's spares away in their schedule. So that's just the AP Bio and the AP Chem courses. Okay, maybe only because there's still some silence. I just put in one other reminder. You know, we're here tonight really talking specifically about supporting your children in their academic pursuits. But as guidance counselors, we are an important part of your children's circle of care, and we do offer both that social emotional counseling as well as that academic counseling. So we really hope that our offices, you know, are the safest of places for your children on campus, places that they can come, they can unpack things in a confidential space. They can vent without judgment, and we're here to you know listen to them, help build their capacity, and support them. And Sweet, I see a question.
Hi, thanks for this presentation. I have a question to understand the application deadline process. I'm seeing different dates for different schools, and I guess my question: do university have like a rolling enrollment? So if you apply, you know, really early in the fall, you have a higher chance of getting in versus if the deadline's, you know, January, February, and you wait till then. By then, the numbers have shrunken. I'm not sure. I'm not really clear on that, and maybe it varies by school.
Yeah, sure. I'll start and anybody can chime in. One thing that I think we do really well at TCS is getting those applications out early. So the deadline isn't until early January, for instance, for most Ontario schools. And actually, I noticed this year that some like Waterloo had even a deadline of February at the end of January, whether it was January 31st or February 1st. But what I would say is we work really hard to get our students to apply to programs that they know they're interested in at that November break or end of November, early December kind of area. And what we're finding with that is that come the beginning of January, many of our students already have an offer in the bank. And that just is like a really nice confidence boost for them and a bit of a security. Now, I'll be honest that the most competitive programs in Ontario probably are waiting on some more data before they offer their big offers go out. So they might be waiting to see, okay, what really is a student doing in calculus halfway through the year or chemistry or something like that. But we always encourage, you know, our students to have a solid list between 5 and 7 schools to apply to. We encourage them to have 1 or 2 that feel like particularly safe, one that you know, we're pretty confident in, and then maybe 1 or 2 that we're not so sure about what's going to happen there. And so if a student can create their list in that sort of way and get that application out early, many schools, I wouldn't call it a rolling admission, but many schools will throw out some early offers that just kind of puts a student at ease earlier than I would say many other students across the province. I don't know if Ty or Keith, you have anything to add there?
No, that's good. But your good point about, you know, the more competitive schools want that extra data point. They want us, you know, like in terms of like McGill programs, for the most part, you'll get the odd outlier with, you know, an early offer coming in. But a number will want, again, like the Queen's Commerce and the advanced entry opportunity at Ivy. You're going to find out most likely in the 3rd week of May, with their deadline to let you know is at the end of May. Because again, they want the April grade submission. Sometimes less competitive schools, because we do just by design apply very early. You know, less competitive program with you know, a large number of spots within the program, you may find out earlier on. And with that said, is we've had some competitive ones come out just recently, now that the February marks have gone in. So again, things are going to start trickling out at a faster pace now. After the 3rd week of April, when those grades are submitted, the end of April, 1st week of May, 65% of all offers in the province of Ontario come out after that April submission. So yeah, so a lot like mid-January, most of our students already have one in their back pocket in terms of offers, which is great. It's a great feeling for them. And then like, how come I'm still waiting on this? I'm waiting on that. And I said, well, hey, let's not lose sight that the deadline in Ontario is January 26th. You happen to apply on November 10th. You know, so our students here, oh, I got an offer here, I got an offer there. It's because we've applied so very early relative to the deadline. But I said, we got months to go. So I know it's the nerve-wracking waiting game for the students and the parents. I've gone through it myself as a parent a few times. And yeah, so realistically, most offers will come out in May. when they get that extra data point or data set in terms of the grades.
And just to make it more complicated, for schools that have the supplements that are required as well, like that's also now what you're seeing is different deadlines or due dates for some of that stuff. So while that initial application might have been due on January 15th, they might have then their supplements, those could be essays or the video essays or things like that. They would have those that are due at a later time.
Okay, thank you.